supposed to be?
Food's turning out well, and it seems like I might have cooked too much, quote unquote, but now I can just meal prep it. It's kind of great. We'll do barbecue snack wraps. It's nice. All right, next one. What's the future of AniTube? This is an interview that Shaybs is doing with somebody. Kiro Riri Podol. I don't know. Oh, Kero Riri Podol. Like frogs lily pad. Okay. Shaybs was on the money, talking about the reputation of AniTube. Okay, well, apparently this is on the money. Well, okay, we'll see. Let's see where this goes.
What about AniTube do you love? What sort of future do you see for it? Where do you see yourself within AniTube as a curator? And how much bigger could it possibly get? Anime is growing so much, but AniTube isn't growing at the same pace. I don't know where it's going, but maybe you have a better insight.
Unfortunately, I don't too much because a lot of that insight has to come from knowing YouTube as a platform, and I don't pretend to know much about YouTube and its goings on and the algorithm and what's popular and what is a hit. I think there's certain creators like Nuxtaku that are way more in tune and have practiced and have gotten other connections. Like I'm really proud. I really like to see how he's been doing, where he's grown into this more internet personality and he's able to collab with some much bigger creators and get us more in the space. The same with the Anime Man. He had this recent video about Japan quiz show, and it's got fucking everybody. It's like huge stars. Like it actually really packed.
That was a surprise. That was
just
huge surprise.
Really awesome, right? But it's not anime. And Nux is the same way. He's if you remember his stuff, he was a lot like Anime Uproar or like some of these other channels, which were very much just like talking about anime in a very general way and just kind of databasing you about like what makes Zoro such a great character and and kind of going over a bunch of shonen characters. And he had this Flex series that like really propelled him, but now it was around that time where he was or a little bit afterwards, where he was realizing that anime is not getting the numbers, it's not getting the views, it's not a lucrative area in the way that a vlog might be or a cult of personality might be.
I just want to say that Shaybs, it fucking replicated the zoom in, zoom out, the slow zoom out perfectly in this fucking video, and he was taking a little joke at the editing on this video. It was perfect replication. Perfect.
General videos, like they're just kind of memey and fun. It's just not the platform right now. I mean, I like what people are making. I like what I'm making, and I like what other people are making. And I'm hoping more so than my digest series, I'm hoping that my videos on my main channel are like what I really kind of hope pushing people and like inspiring people and educating people and stuff. And they just have a better relationship with anime as a whole. But like, if they see that and want to make something themselves, I think that's really awesome. That was kind of the big ending point of my Gurren Lagann video, which is all about inspiration and stuff like that. It's tough. I think I think you were I really envy your optimism about anime YouTube, with it being so early 2000 and this kind of like we're all talking with each other and stuff. It's sort of the truth. There are definitely certain communities that talk with each other. There's still some channels that are very much an island, but there's also a lot of channels that are dead or just like not uploading the same way they used to, that are a lot more formative, or informative in the way some of us might be now or something, but we don't see ourselves as that. And in terms of us getting big, it's like, I don't know, like that would be nice, but it doesn't seem as viable. I don't know. There's something with like Gigix managed to find it where he's still able to talk about anime, but he also has this like trash talk thing, which is very much not really about anime. Like you know that they all like and know about anime, but they don't really talk about it very much. I think wisely, because they realize that like a lot of people get upset at them when they spread misinformation or kind of talk out their ass or whatever. And so they just talk about food and no one can get upset at them for that. And it's nice conversation. It's honestly kind of smart. And I really like kind of the bigger stuff that they make and everything like that. Although they're not as...
So I think like 4 minutes in, this is not what Shaybs' exact argument is, but this seems to be kind of the basis for his argument. It seems like the people that are successful in AniTube are making a swap to doing how should I say this? They're making a swap to advertising themselves as a character or a personality as opposed to advertising necessarily the content itself. That's probably true. I mean, especially when you look at the examples he listed, like the Anime Man, Giguk. I don't know who the guy was that he listed that was a VTuber. I've never seen that guy before in my life. I thought the skull thing on his head was Noggin, but it's not. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I think I would probably agree. But I think there's a larger issue. I think the larger issue he talked about briefly was there's too many. There's a portion of AniTube, and unfortunately, it's sort of devolving into this again to a different extent. So let me give a brief history. So I've been around AniTube, doing AniTube since 2014. I've been discussing anime since like 2009, right? So the AniTube around the time I started and was engaging with it early on, there were like 3 content types pretty much. There's the episodic reviewer thing that becomes really popular around 2014. It like peaks then in popularity. That's how I started off doing my stuff. There's the full series reviewer, and those guys are just story, characters, animation, art, like enjoyment, give a rating on a 5-star scale or a 10-point scale. And the fucking like douchebag chocolate type channels, but there were very few of those, right? He was pretty much like an anomaly. Those were pretty much the 3 types of videos you had. Once you get into 2015, 2016, you start getting into the evolution of like video essays, and that's when video essays as a whole start to pop on the entirety of YouTube, and not even just AniTube. It's just YouTube in general. It's just video essay, right? And at that point, it's not overloading, but you have people that are popping in doing video essays. You got like Pause and Select starts, I think, around like 2016. You have I don't know when replay value actually starts, but generally speaking, that's when people start making the switch. 2017, 2018, I wasn't necessarily around too much, but it's mainly like the evolution of like video essays. And now we have the point where most of AniTube like follows the video essay format. Episodic reviewers aren't even considered necessarily a portion of AniTube. They're kind of like out, like sectioned off or whatever. And then there's people that just do other stuff. I guess the one phase I did miss is 2014, so pretty much 2012 through 2014, early 2015. That's the podcasting era as well. That's the podcasting era of AniTube. So that is a very important piece to mention, because I think that might actually have some implications on where the future of AniTube is. So yeah, I mean, that's your basic history of AniTube in regards to what content is happening at what particular time. We are currently in the section of time where the majority of the content is video essays. People that are not making video essays typically aren't included in what we presumably denote as AniTube. And if we even denote them in AniTube, we denote them as like some lower class individual or some shit, on the basis that their content is not as intellectual as it seems like. And to be fair, I don't think that's entirely a bad thing. I think like we can critically give opinions on people's content and shit and whatnot, but that just pretty much is my perceived state of the community at this point. My problem with the community is that the video essays are too dry. And by dry, I mean, Shaybs put it perfectly. They are too databasey. Like all of the fucking video essays that come out nowadays are just so caught up in giving like analyses that are just straight up from the fucking show, or it's like some analysis, some like explanation of like symbolism, but it's like some literature explanation of symbolism, and there's I don't know, it feels much more academic, and that is okay, but it's like pseudo academic, because there's not actually a ton of people doing research like Pause and Select. It's more like there's just people that are making videos about topics that are not necessarily surface level, mentioning some things that might be academic, having somewhat of an academic analysis, and then not going much further than that. And so to some degree it can come off as pseudo-intellectual, but in other degrees it's more like there's just nothing to get out of the content a lot of the time if it's not something that's just like pure analysis. And a lot of the time when people go to watch these things for analysis, there's a decent portion of the audience that's not actually there for analysis. They're there for reinforcement. They're there for reinforcement of their own analysis. They want to see if people agree and whatnot. But I mean, like, again, there are those people that go out and they're not there for reinforcement, and they actually do genuinely want information. So that's not to say that the video essay format is useless. It's just to say video essays are, outside of the information they provide in regards to the anime, they don't offer much. And I think the problem with that is that you limit your videos in scope to only people that watch anime, which is something I'm getting away from, right? What the thing that I'm moving towards is not just making my videos about anime, right? And it's not necessarily that I'm just broadening my topic. It's that I don't know how much value is solely in making an analysis on something that's anime related, as opposed to making an analysis on something that's anime related, has some impact on my own life, and then I can give my anecdote and my experiences as reference, and for like the audience basically to empathize with me, right? Like if I can use my experiences not just with anime, but relate my experiences with the anime to my own life, then I can engage a viewer that may not necessarily be engaged with anime, right? Because then the anime serves as a lens for, in my case, it's introspection, right? But for the viewer, it can also serve as a lens for introspection, essentially, right? Because they can then go watch the anime, or they can just have a decent enough basis on what the fuck is going on, and then engage with me, the person. So I guess to some degree, we're getting back to what Shaybs is saying, right? Like, at that point, you're not necessarily engaging entirely with the anime itself. You're not engaging with the music video or whatever the fuck I'm covering. You're engaging with the empathetic experience of engaging with me, pretty much. That's what you're getting out of the video. And you can use that experience for introspection or improving your own life or doing something else with your own life. But my point being, I'm getting far away from just trying to provide information about shows, because I don't think that is inherently useful for people. I think that has its place, but in regards to where AniTube is going, that's where AniTube is now. It's giving opinions and analyses of shit that is not necessarily useful outside of an anime context, and as a result, you have a large portion that is not. You have a large portion of non-AniTube that is not engaged, and a large portion of AniTube that is also not engaged, because they're like, damn, if I've not seen the show, what's the point of me watching the analysis or whatnot, right? So yeah, I mean, that's generally my thought. I do want to hear what he says for the rest of this. Maybe I'll cut this into its own video. This could actually be a decent topic.
I think after the second year, I haven't been watching them as much, but that's okay. It's like they're doing their thing, and it's awesome. But yeah, it's like a lot of them aren't making anime content. They just aren't. And if they are, they have to make out something that's current, that's popular, that's like a perennial class. Like if you make a Berserk video, you'll get views. If you make I don't even know. I'm not like in tune. I was like, oh, that'll get views. I have no idea. And I'm not very good at that. I have things that I think will get a lot of views, and I get very sorely disappointed when they don't. I'm not like in tune in the same way. There's some channels that are growing pretty well, like Hazel. She's been doing great, and she's been uploading pretty regularly, and all of her videos are really good. And she's still talking kind of more in the obscure way, and she's digging into this stuff that no one's heard of, which is excellent. That's kind of the ideal content, in my opinion, even though it's not the ideal content for YouTube. If no one knows about this, like, how do you, what? Like, YouTube's like, what am I supposed to do with this? Which is understandable, because they have this, it's a huge saturated thing. It's not like the formative days of YouTube, nor is it like, also, I think anime YouTube just had way more respect a few years ago. And there's certain players that, you know, I could be very overly critical of, but like at the end of the day, I respect them for doing what they do. But you have, you know, you had formerly Digibro, but now Trixie Beatrice the Golden Witch, who is still active. I'm not going to say that they're a dead channel.
What is Digi's name? I thought Digi was now YGG Studio. Trixie the Golden Witch? Yeah, we just gonna move on. I don't know about all that. I don't have an opinion on that.
Although you could always make an argument, it's like, oh, their views or whatever. You can criticize the direction of her channel all you want, but it was her, as well as Mother's Basement, that were really getting a lot of views for a bunch of stuff, and it didn't really matter what they uploaded. But now their stuff is really stagnated in the same way, and it doesn't get the same amount of traction because the algorithms changed. It changes all the time, and that's just what happens. Some people who are very savvy to the algorithm at one point aren't anymore, or they have to adapt or whatever. But I think with you know, some of the stuff that they made, I think made a very negative impression on people. And there's, at least on Twitter, it seems to me that there's this kind of consensus that anime YouTube sucks, and that there are a lot of these, you know, trying to misinform you, or they're bought, or whatever, and there's no changing that perception to me. That doesn't seem, there's no changing these people's minds. It feels like a group consensus. Reddit, you know, there's a whole thing where, like, you know, part of the reason anime YouTube was able to get the size that it did back then, not that I was fully there at the time, because I wasn't making videos or anything, but like, you could get a really popular video by posting it on r/anime on Reddit, anymore, and yes, you get a lot of traction that way. I'm pretty sure that's how my Berserk video got so big, was because it was shared very widely on various Berserk Reddits that I never even knew about, and people would just share them there. But r/anime, around the time like 2016, 2017, they cut off anime YouTube videos altogether, pretty much. Like, you couldn't post your own videos. Right. And there was just something about it where they just weren't welcome on that platform. And I think they realized that now, and like they've kind of walked that back, but the damage is done. You really can't get a traction that way.
Right.
And it's just this. It's just the YouTube's just not interested in what we have to make.
I don't know if it's just not YouTube that's not interested in what you have to make. I don't know if the people are necessarily interested in what you have to make. Because again, the problem is, so somebody made a comment, they tweeted towards Joe. Joe had said something, he had gone on like this long tweet rant. Joe, I'm talking to his Pause and Select. He went on this long tweet rant like maybe like a month or two ago, where he was like, YouTube basically is not fucking with my content, right? Like, I put this shit out, it's not getting sent to sub boxes, even when it is sent, like, it's not pushed by the fucking algorithm. I'm making shit that I think is legitimately great content, and to be fair, Pause and Select is the best AniTuber by a fucking mile. It's not even close, right? So, like, I don't have any problem with him making the statement necessarily, right? But one of the tweets that he got was like, I think it might have actually been from, what is the name of the guy that Shaybs always shits on? And I made a video on exclamation point, right? Like, I don't like that. I never fucked with that guy's content, right? I think exclamation point, was making comment. Maybe it wasn't exclamation point. It might have been somebody else. I might be entirely wrong. If I'm throwing your name out and I'm shouldn't be, my bad. I'm sorry. But, yeah, I think it might have been exclamation point, but if it's not, we'll just call this person, some YouTuber, reached out to him and was like, yeah, but if you're gonna make your video so fucking esoteric, or if you're gonna make them so long-winded and like they're gonna cover topics that are not very common, then you can't complain about the algorithm and whatever. And I was like, this this is a weird comment to make because calling Joe's videos esoteric nowadays makes no fucking sense because I wouldn't say they're mainstream, but they're much easier to comprehend. They're much more sensible. He does a much better job at storyboarding them. He does a much better job at scripting now. He's cut down on like the lexicon that he uses. And I mean, like, generally speaking, his videos are just damn near like PBS productions, which has inspired me to step up my quality massively, right? But my point being that to some degree, what that guy said was right, though, right? The diagnosis about Joe's content necessarily is not correct, about the quality of Joe's content is not correct. However, the diagnosis that what he's talking about is not necessarily what the masses want is entirely fucking valid, right? Like if you're gonna make a fucking video on Kisho Tenketsu, right, you cannot expect that everybody's gonna know what the fuck Kisho Tenketsu is, even if they don't. And like, I mean, like in my case, I didn't know what it was, but even if you're trying to inform people about Kisho Tenketsu, right, you can't act as if people are actually going to care about Japanese 4-part structure. A lot of people are not going to give a shit, which is why, again, instead, this is just me posing a hypothetical, right? If instead it was me making the video on Kisho Tenketsu, right? And instead of just talking about the 4-act structure, I'm like, the 4-act structure, and like I throw in some message about like how my fucking long lost love story is also reminiscent of some 4-act structure. Like that is a reach and how to apply it, but that essentially accomplishes what I'm saying of people are willing to watch shit that they can empathize with, and you can make content and use that to your advantage, which is what I'm going to be doing. But if you're just making content that is only applicable to a certain portion of people that are like only in AniTube and are only looking for this particular type of content, intellectual academic content, then don't expect to grow so fucking much, right? And my point with all of that was, it's not YouTube that doesn't necessarily not want your content. It's not necessarily the algorithm, right? The algorithm functions in a way that it sends content that it believes that people want to watch. So if it's not sending your shit, it means it doesn't believe people want to watch you, right? Part of that can just be flaws of the algorithm, but I don't think that it's entirely flaws of the algorithm. I think that, largely speaking, the algorithm actually is reflective of the shit people want to watch. Why do you think, like, all these fucking pet videos are so, like, you can have all these animal videos that are so fucking interesting or whatever, even though, like, they don't necessarily have any sort of relation to, like, or like the, you know, animals themselves aren't necessarily interesting to all that many people. It doesn't fucking matter. Like, if you see a dog like chasing after an ice cream truck, you're like, oh wow, I want to watch a dog chase after an ice cream truck. I can imagine how happy I would be watching a dog chase after a fucking ice cream truck. What if my dog chased after an ice cream truck? Actually, mine just did. Like, you know, the ability to empathize is a really strong fucking tool, and AniTube does not use that shit. They just don't. And most creators in AniTube, I'm gonna be honest, like I'm not trying to shit on AniTube as a whole here, but most creators in AniTube aren't very funny, and their writing styles aren't very interesting, and everybody is just some really plain derivative of douchebag chocolate, right? Like, everybody just has the same fucking style. It's either like pause and select academic style, but you're not as good at it, you're not as intellectual, and your content's not as fucking interesting, and neither is your subject matter. Or you run into like people that are I guess like a what type of content, but his content is actually pretty decent. But people that make that vein of content that actually aren't good at making jokes or whatnot. Or I guess, let me change that. Who did we just watch the other day? It was, fuck, the guy that made the Sword Art was the best show ever at one point video. I can't remember his name at the moment. That guy is like a great example of like that's good content. But most people in AniTube will make shitty versions of his content, essentially, I guess is my point. Like, it's not as empathetic, it's the anecdotes don't hit as hard, and the jokes aren't as funny. as like how he fucking does it, or how like douchebag would do it, or things of the sort. And so it's not that YouTube is not pushing your shit because they just hate AniTube or something. That's not built into the algorithm. They're not pushing your shit because they don't think people want to watch your shit. They don't think people want to watch my shit. They probably don't. Yeah.
So, you know, in terms of the growth and success of the platform, you know, for those people who want to make it their job or something, I'm sorry, I don't see it. Unless it's like, unless you're doing something that's not really explicitly anime, or it's like anime adjacent. Like, there's still some people that find success with like reaction content or review content that are just a lot more baseline and stuff. But like, that still pops, that still does decent for them, and that's fine. They can do that. But in terms of like doing different stuff or essay type content, I don't see it. You know, and I don't want to put my stock in it, which is why I'm really grateful that that isn't my job. And so I'm just like, I'm okay with Digest pulling just 1,000 views every video. It's not very, I mean, it's big enough that like Trash Taste knows who I am, which is awesome. Like they shouted me out at the end of their YouTuber video, which is crazy. And I don't take that for granted, but
I'm gonna give a shout out to my boy Shaybs. Like, not gonna lie, not gonna lie. Sometimes I'm just looking forward to being on his digest in the good section. AniTube Digest, which is a series where Shaybs, this AniTuber, goes through basically like some of his favorite YouTube videos to do with like in the anime YouTube sphere,
and some of his least favorite,
and some of his least favorites as well. And this is like the one series I've pretty much think every anime YouTuber watches, even though even if they don't want to admit it.
I told him, I'm like,
hold on, what the fuck was the?
Pretty much think every anime YouTuber watches, even though.
Facts.
Even if they don't want to admit it.
I told him, I'm like, everyone watches it.
Because everyone doesn't want to admit it. Every AniTuber secretly wants to be on the good part.
Everybody.
It's like, did I make it onto the good one this week?
I see the number, isn't it?
It was fucking crazy when I first made it onto his list. I didn't even know I made it onto his list, so I found his fucking content, Shaybs' channel, right? And I was like, damn, I hope I can make it onto one of these someday. And I go back and I'm scrolling and I am the final video on the very first AniTube Digest. And he's like, yeah, this is the video that made me want to like start doing it, or like make this fucking video or whatever. And I'm like, I feel like I have reached my fucking peak. I fucking made it. Get fucked. I am the ultimate AniTuber, nigga. I made it there, and then like I had to like bumfuck ask essentially to like about like the podcast thing that I was doing. It was all right. Like the podcast was not that bad, but I mean, like, you know, I want to be on there for I'm making an Inochi Bakari video. I hope I end up getting on there for there, because that's going to be a video I put a bunch of time in for. And having his support would help, because like I'd like for that video to get out, because it's not necessarily just about Inochi Bakari, which is a music video. It's about like my struggles with nihilism and like meaninglessness and purposelessness and things of the sort. And so like it again, that's a piece of content that's like, it's, you know, there is benefit in, you know, seeing the analysis of the media itself, but there's also benefit in, you know, empathizing with the person who's making it. So, but yeah, everybody watches Shaybs, dude.
It's like, my mom's like, wow, 10,000, like 16,000, that's a lot of subscribers. I'm like, yeah, I guess in like the real world or something, or you know, you could say that, but you know, it's not the same. I don't know.
It's a very good interview. That's a very good interview. I fuck with that. I fuck with that a lot. I mean, like you pretty much know my direction. If the now the question is, what's the prognosis of the solution? Like, what's the diagnosis, right? Like, so I feel like the diagnosis is exactly what I said in regards to making content that is more empathetic, right? Like, once AniTube starts to make content that's more empathetic, regardless of if people engage with the anime itself or not, if you can find a way to market it and then use anime as a medium that just happens to be like part of your video, as opposed to being like, let's talk about anime and director and animators and anime, then you'll be able to draw more people. But just simply sticking in your sphere ain't gonna help you grow. Like, I guess let's put it this way. You can't expect to grow outside of your sphere if you're only making content for your fucking sphere. Right? Like, the sphere is not going to expand unless people come into it. So in other words, you're relying on anime blowing solely off of anime itself. And AniTube blowing solely off of anime itself instead of taking the initiative to make it blow by making content that is actually inventive. And by inventive, I mean content that's useful for the average non-anime viewer. That's what AniTube's got to figure out. I've already posed my solution. I'm going to follow my solution. I think my solution is going to work, but I don't know to what degree. But we'll see. I mean, my solution: make more empathetic content so that people can actually relate to it, relate to your content and shit. Because otherwise, they're not gonna get anything out of it. But that's all